You'll be it correctly, I don't think. So, and there's a lot of words in here that I'm not going to pronounce too well because, Spanish. And that's my problem, not theirs. All right, let's get started. One, that's the name of the thing. These are just essays and stuff. And some of them are poems and some of them are other things. So bear with me. And I don't have one, which speaks of the liberal chance of 24 myriads of reefs and gold, of grounding on the sandbars of depression and of other dangers that threaten pirates on the high seas. Here's the poem. Now bear with me, I'm not good with reading poems. The nation and its sorrow speak. They have struck me, pained, like a piece of land, scarred, with wounds that do not heal, with beatings and falls. They have struck me like a never-ending curse, like a home left to ruin and bitterness. Oh, the weight of history. I'm filled with treachery and thefts. Every added humiliation grows. Each new misery accumulates. The imperial eagle tears at my insides. The powerful men divide among themselves. My seas and mountains, my rivers and deserts, my valleys and streams. These are my afflictions, great and never ending. The pain of my mangled ground, the pain of my impoverished land, the pain of my son's betrayal, the pain of my battle lost. One can reach this country through the penthouse or through the basement. To lower Mexico, one arrives crying on foot through the mud. In 1993, in the municipalities of Ocosingo, close to San Quentin, we spoke with a Guatemalan who was to begin the long and improbable journey across the Mexican lands to the American Union. To achieve this, he had to risk his money, his health, his life, and his dignity. He and his family had to trapeze through Chiapas and northern Baja California, to navigate through a nightmare of misery and death. We asked him why he was risking everything to go to the United States and why he didn't just stay and work in one of the Mexican states that he would be crossing on his journey. He answered laughing fictitiously, quote, I'd have to be ridiculous to do that. If we are from Guatemala, a bad Guatemala, you guys are from Guadapur, a worse Guatemala. Then he related a story about Mexico, told by those who had made it clear to the northern border and had been deported by the Border Patrol. It was about a Mexico, a far cry from its tourist attractions, with its murderous police, corrupt government functionaries, panhandlers, North American prices, and Central American salaries, death squads, and a population living in misery and hopelessness. A story we already knew, the nightmare that lives in the basement of this country, the nightmare that finally woke us up in the January of, quote, not quote, 1994, reaching the Mexican penthouse. One arrives by plane, an airport in Mexico City, Monterrey, Guadalajara, or Acapulco is the entrance to an elevator that neither goes up nor down, but rides horizontally across the land of the 24 richest men in the country, the path of modern-day Mexico, the government of offices where neoliberalism is overseen, the business clubs there where the national flag fades more with each passing day, the vacation resorts, those true vacations, is to mirror a social class that does not want to see what it is below their feet. The long spiral stairway, the labyrinth that leads all the way down to the lower Mexico, Mexico on foot, and Mexico of mud, above the blood and clay that live in the basement of this country. The omnipotent 24 are busy counting 44, I don't know, it says 44,100 million. So I don't know if that's billion. In modern day presidential gifts, Penthouse Mexico Supplies has no time to look down. It is too busy with complicated macroeconomics calculations, exchange of promises, praises, and indexes of inflation, interest rates, and the level of foreign investments, important exports, concessions, lists of assets and resources, scales where the country and the dignity have not weighed. The public debt guaranteed long range has gone from 3,196 million to in 1970 to 76,257 million in 1989. And in 1970, the private non-guaranteed U.S. debt was 2,770 million. In 1989, it was up to 3,999 million. In 1989, the short-term public debt reached 10,295. At the beginning of the 1990s, Mexico owed 95,642 million. I think that's billions because I don't know why they do this. Each year, this country pays off more debt. Each year, it owes more. The use of International Monetary Fund credits went up from zero in 1970 to 5,091 million in 1989. The industrial and commercial economic growth takes its toll on the Mexican countryside. In agriculture, in the period of 1965 to 1980, production grew up at an average national rate of 3%. In the period of 1980 to 1989, only by 1%. Meanwhile, the foreign trade imports speaks their complicated language of numbers. Grain imports in 1974 were only 2,881,000 metric tons. In 1984, they reached 7,054,000. Of the total, in 1965, only 5% of imports were foodstuffs. In 1989, food imports reached 16%. On the other hand, in the same period, machinery and transportation equipment imports were reduced 50% in 1965, 34% in 1989. Exports confirm in the total the sale of combustibles and minerals increased from 22% in 1965 to 41% in 1989. Foreign sales of machinery and transportation equipment increased from 1% in 1965 to 24% in 1989. The export of products of prime necessity were reduced from 62% in 1965 to 14% in 1989. In the Penthouse Mexico, Mr. Carlos Canales de Gortari is president, but on the board of stockholders. During this modern times, Mexican neopolitics make public functionaries into a species of retail salesman, and the president of the republic into a sales manager of a gigantic business, Mexico Inc. The best businesses in the country to be a politician in the state party in Mexico, a paternal shadow of ex-presidents Miguel Amelín Valdez, Mr. Amigo, protects the steps of the new generations of Mexican politicians. The neo-elect Ernest Zedillo is repeating the fallacy of the American dream. Poor children who grew up to be rich, that is to say, to be politicians, and the modernistic economic program, which is 48 years old. A smokescreens about the lack of solvency, credit, and markets will again blind the head of medium to large businesses. The law of the jungle, free trade, will repeat its dictates. More monopolies, fewer jobs, and neoliberal politics. Growth simply means to sell. To practice politics, one must practice marketing technology. Sooner or later, the quote citizens of the Penthouse Mexico will be named Man of the Year by some foreign institution. To achieve this, he must follow instructions to be named Man of the Year. And here's the instructions. Number 1, carefully combine the technocrat and repentant oppositionists, a sham businessman, a union bully, a landowner, a builder, an alchemist, or in contemptual arts, a brilliant intellectual, a television, a radio, and an official party. Set this mixture aside in a jar and label it modernity. 2, take the agricultural worker, a peasant with no land, an unemployed person, an industrial worker, a teacher without a school, a dissatisfied housewife, an applicant for housing and services, a touch of honest press, a student, a homosexual, a member of the opposition to the regime. Divide these up as much as possible, set them aside in a jar, and label them anti-Mexico. 3, take an indigenous Mexican, take away the crafts and take a picture of her. Put her crafts and the photos in a jar and set them aside and label it traditions. 4, put the indigenous Mexican in another jar, set it aside and label it dispensable. One must not forget to disinfect oneself after the last operation. 5, well, now open a store and hang a huge sign that says Mexico 1994 through 2000. Huge end of the century sell. 6, smile for the camera. Make sure the makeup covers the dark circles under the eyes causing by the man's nightmares and process as has caused. Note, always have on hand a policeman, a soldier, an airplane ticket out of the country. These items may be necessary at any time. Penthouse Mexico has no foreign vocation. For this it would have to have a nationality. The only country mentioned with sincerity on the increasingly narrow top floor is the country called money. And that country has no patriots, only profit and loss indices. History happens only with the stock markets, and its modern heroes are good salesmen. For some reason, due to the other history, the real history, that top floor, instead of expanding, is contracting quickly. Every day, fewer and fewer are able to reside up there, sometimes with delicacies, other times with brutality, and incapable ones are forced to go down those stairs. The door to Mexico's penthouse elevator opens to the great international airports. It does not go up or down. To leave the penthouse, you must descend those stairs, go down further and further until to get to Middle Mexico. One goes by car. It's an urban, and its image is a carbon copy that repeats itself throughout the country, throughout Mexico City. It is an image of concrete and that cannot deny the contradictions that the extremely rich and the extremely poor coexist. Middle Mexico smells bad. Something is rotting from within, while the sense of collectivity is being diluted. Middle Mexico does have a foreign vocation. Something tells it that too rise to Penthouse, Mexico. The road passes through a country that is not this one. In order to triumph in Mexico, one must go abroad. This does not necessarily mean to leave physically, but to leave behind history, to leave behind goals. This vocation of exile is a synonym of to triumph, has nothing to do with the physical crossing of border. There are those who have left and are still with us, and there are those who, although still with us, are gone. Only 3 states of the Federation have very low indices. The marginalization, the Federal District, Mexico City, Nuevo Leon, the North Baja California. 10 more are within the low index marginalization. Coahuila, Baja California. South, the Agua Conslantines, the Chihuahua, the Sonora, the Juanlesco, the Colima, the Tamaulipas, the Estado de Mexico, and Morelos. Another 4 have a medium index and of marginalization. Quintana Roo, Sonola, Noreta, and the Tlaxcala. Sorry, everybody. Middle Mexico serves in the worst possible way, believing that it has a life. It has all of the disadvantages of the Penthouse, Mexico. Historical ignorance, cynicism, opportunism, and an emptiness that imports products can only fill partially or not at all. It has all the disadvantage of Lower Mexico: economic instability, insecurity, bewilderment, sudden loss of hope, and what's more, on every street corner, misery knocks on the window to the car. Sooner or later, Middle Mexico must get out of the car, and if he still have some change left, get into a taxi, a collective taxi, a subway, reach a bus terminal, and start journeying down all the way to Lower Mexico. Just gonna make sure. All right, so we're good. Which one can reach? Almost immediately. It coexists in permanent conflict with Middle Mexico. Half of the people in the 17th Mexican state in the middle, low and lower level indexes of marginalization live in cramped conditions, in poverty, with 2 or more persons to a room. 50% of each unit earns less than 2 minimum wages daily. In Tlaxcala, 3/4 of the population live in poverty. In Agua Conlantes, in Chihuahua, Jalisco, Colima, Tamaulipas, Morelos, Quintana Roo, Sinaloa, and Tlaxcala. A third of the population over 15 years old has not completed primary school. In Nayarit, more than 40% have not. The 1/3 of the population in Tlaxcala has no sewers or plumbing. Quintana Roo and Sinaloa have a 1/4 of their inhabitants living on dirt floors. The state of Durango, Guarantero, Guanajuato, Michoacan, Yucatan, Campeche, Tabasco, Zacatecas, and St. Louis Potasa have high indices of marginalization. Nearly half the people over 15 have not completed primary school. 1/3 have neither plumbing nor sewers. Nearly 2/3 live in crowded conditions, and more than 60% earn less than 2 minimum wage per day. Lower Mexico does not share. It battles for an urban and rural space, notwithstanding the existence of its own internal divided line. Its borders in rural areas, estates, haciendas, and large agricultural concerns impose upon ejidos and peasant communities. In urban colonies, it is not necessary to state the level of income, social positions, and political vocation. It is enough to say in what colony of what city one lives, the name of the location, the services, the manner of speaking of their people, the way they dress, their entertainment, education. Everything limits and classifies trying to order to accommodate the chaos that rules Mexican cities. Within one city, there are thousands of cities fighting, surviving, struggling. In the countryside, it is the mode of transportation, the way one dresses, and the attention one receives from the bank manager that indicates one class. A person standing can be determined by how long it takes him or her to be received in a reception areas of the financial or political world. In Lower Mexico, the manor house on the Porfirian Hacienda has been replaced by the inner office of the bank. This is how modern times have penetrated rural Mexico. Lower Mexico has fighter's vocation. It is brave. It is solidarist. It is a clan. It is the hood, quote unquote. It is the gang, the race, the friend. It is the strike, the march, and the meeting. It is taking back one's land. It is blocking highways. It is the quote, I don't believe you. It is the quote, I won't take it anymore. It is the Orel. Lower Mexico is the master tradesman, the mason, the plumber, the factory worker, the driver, the employee, the subway bus shared cab student, the street cleaner, the truck driver, and the logistician, the housewife, the small businessman, the traveling salesman, the farmer, the mini and micro entrepreneurs, the miner, the colonizer, the peasants, the tenant farmers from the province yet living in the capital, the peon, the longshoremen in the port cities, the fishermen and the sailors, and the used clothes dealers, the butcher, the artisans. It is all the uncentras. Let me hear it in this word. Hold on a second. What I like about this is that I can hear it. Hold on, let me hear this word.
Lower Mexico is the master tradesman, the mason, the plumber, the factory worker, the driver, the employee.
One second, everybody.
The subway bus shared cab student, the street cleaner, the truck driver and logician, the housewife, the small businessman, the traveling salesman, the
It's getting there.
the mini and micro entrepreneur, the miner, the colonizer, the peasant, the tenant farmer, from the provinces, yet living in the capital, the peon, the longshoreman in port cities, the fisherman and sailor,
One more line.
the used clothes dealer, the butcher, the artisan. It is all the et ceteras that one
The et ceteras. Okay, so the et ceteras. Instead of saying et cetera, he just said et ceteras. That one finds on any bus, on any street corner, and any given nook of any given place in any Mexico. The Lower Mexico. Lower Mexico is the substance of the imprisoned, of the dispossessed, of the garnishment, of liens, of layoffs, of evictions, of kidnapping, of torture, of disappeared, of hassle, of death. Lower Mexico has absolutely nothing, but hasn't realized it. Lower Mexico already has overpopulation problems. Lower Mexico is a millionaire in one sums up its misery and its despair. Lower Mexico shares both urban and rural spaces, slips and falls, battles and downfalls. Lower Mexico is really far down, so far down that it seems that there is no way to get farther down, so far down that no one can hardly see that little door that leads to Basement Mexico. One arrives on foot, either barefoot or with rubber-soled huaraches. To get there, one must descend through history and ascend through the indexes of marginalization. Basement Mexico came first, and Mexico was not yet Mexico when it was all just beginning. The new Basement Mexico exists. It lived. Basement Mexico is indigenous because Columbus, through 502 years ago, that the land where he had arrived was India. Quote, indigenous, they use the I word, is what the natives of these lands have been called from time on. Basement Mexico is, all right, here we go, everybody, the Mazahon, the Amazongan, the Telepenecan, the Nauhatalan, Koran, the Hocho, the Yaquai, the Mayan, the Terra Hormarian, the Mextec, the Zapatucan, the Cholantol, Sirai, the Trilquiz, the Cuman, the Cucapan, the Paipan, the Paypan, the Cochamuman, the Kalawang, the Kailikiwan, the Tequan, I can't say his name, Pam, the Chichamecan, Otomai, the I can't say these words, everybody. I'm trying. The Maltlazacan, the Ocotecan, the Papacolucan, the Aztec, the Actecan, the Chopolucan, the Cocatec, the Chatuna, the Chaino, the Chanectec, Hueve, the Pamagan, I don't know why they're making me do this, the Pama, the Ripanhun, the Huangaranwan, the Hasatec, oh my gosh, I'm almost done, everybody, bear with me, Chalu, the Joan Lalectic, the Mexi, the Zanquan, the Tontonacan, the Kankampun, the Puracan, I can't do this, the Oraham, the Zotella, the Zoleta, the Tojalabo, the Cholo, the Mem. I'm sorry, everybody. I fucked up all those words. All those words. Jesus Christ. Thank you for whoever who's writing it down. Thank you for writing all that shit down. Basement Mexico is indigenous. However, for the rest of the country, it does not count. It does not produce, sell, or buy. That is, it does not exist. Check out the text of the free trade agreement, and you will find that for this government, the indigenous do not exist. Furthermore, read, oh my gosh, here we go, the Addendum 1001A-1 to the free trade agreement dated October 7th, 1992. Yes, just 5 days before the festivities of the 500th anniversary of the discovery of America. And you will find the Salinas government was forgotten, quote unquote, to mention the National Indigenous Institute on the list of federal government entities. We have been in the mountains a very long time, and perhaps the National Indigenous Institute has been privatized, but it is still surprising that such well-known organizations as the Patron of Aid to Social Reintegration and Aid for the Commercialization of the Fishing Industry and the Dr. Andres, oh my gosh, here we go, Bustamante Goraria Institute for Human Communication appears listed as, quote, government entities. On the other hand, in Canada, there is a Department of Indigenous Affairs and Northern Development. Basement Mexico amasses traditions and miseries. It possesses the highest indices of marginalization and the lowest in nutrition. 6 of 32 states have a very high index of marginalization, all 6 of which have a large indigenous population. The Puebla, the Veracruz, the Hidalgo, Guerrero, the Oaxaca, the Chiapas. The stratification of the Mexicos is repeated in the municipalities. On the national level, there are 2,403 municipalities. Of these, 1,553 have a level of marginalization considered high or very high. 1,118 have medium and low levels of marginalization, and only 132 municipalities have very low levels. States with high indigenous populations have the majority of their municipalities with high and very high levels of marginalization. 94 out of 101 in Chiapas, 59 out of 75 in Guerrero, 437 of 570 in Oaxaca. I'm guessing. 141 of 217 in Puebla, 10 out of 18 in Querétaro, 33 out of 56 in San Luis Potosí, 130 of 207 in Veracruz, 70 out of 108 in Yucatan. In basement Mexico, one lives and dies between the mud and blood, hidden but in its foundation. The contempt that this Mexico suffers will permit to organize itself and shake up the entire system. Its burden will be the possibility of freeing itself from it. For these Mexicans, they lack the democracy, liberty, and justice. Will be organized. It will explode and shine on. Because that seems to be, I think he's drawing that is like one of the biggest places. That's the center point for the liberation process. That's what I'm getting. All right, January 1993. Those are things, yeah. When the entire country remembered that there was a basement, thousands of indigenous armed with truth and fire, with shame and dignity, shook the country awake from its sweet dream of modernity. Yeah. Quote, enough is enough, end quote. This Mexico called out enough dreams, enough nightmares. Ever since steel and the gospel dominated these lands, the indigenous voice has been condemned to resisting a war of extermination that now incorporates all of the gigantic technological advances. Satellites, communication equipment, and infrared rays keep watch on every move, locate rebellions, and on the military maps pinpoints the places for the seeding of bombs and death. Tens of thousands of olive green masks are prepared a new and preposterous war. They want to cleanse their dignity in serving the powerful with indigenous blood. They want to be accomplices in the unjust delivery of poverty and pain. The indigenous Zapatistas will pay for their sins with their blood. What sins? The sins of not being satisfied with handouts, the sin of insisting on their demands for democracy, liberty, and justice for all Mexico, the sins of their, quote, everything for everyone, nothing for us, end quote. Those who deny the indigenous Mexican peasants the possibility of understanding the concept of nation, who force him to look to his past, which separates him from the rest of the country, and prohibits him from looking to the future, which unites the nation and which is the only possibility for survival of the indigenous people, reiterate the division, not the social class, but the categories of citizens. The first is the governing class. The second is the political parties of the opposition. And the third is the rest of the citizens. The indigenous would be in the very inferior category of citizens in information, quote unquote. They are basement Mexico, the waste pile where one goes every once in a while to look for something that could be used on the upper floor, or to fix some imperfection that could endanger the stability or balance in the building. Basement Mexico is the gravest threat to the seasons of sales that is being organized by the Penthouse Mexico. Basement Mexico has nothing to lose and everything to win. Basement Mexico does not give up, can't be bought, resists. In August 1994, a voice arose from Basement Mexico, a voice that does not speak of war, that does not plan to turn back the clock of history by 502 years, that does not demand the vanguard, that does not exclude its miseries. Quote, everything for everyone, nothing for us, end quote. Speak the language of the millennium, the voices of those without a face, of an unnameable, became familiar to the National Democratic Convention. This voice is called Basement Mexico. It speaks to Middle Mexico. Don't let our blood be wasted. Don't let death be in vain, end quote. Say the mountains, through the word separate, roads join. Let the rebellions also embrace. The women, dual dream, dual nightmares, dual awakening. If among men, the division of Mexico's is evident to a point. With women it produces novel effects that makes possible submission and rebellion. The Penthouse Mexico, women reiterate their feligrees status, being a trinket for the world's executives, the wise and efficient ministers of familial well-being that is measuring the dosage of weekly diners at McDonald's. The Middle Mexico women perpetuate an ancient cycle of daughter, girlfriend, wife, and or lover, mother. In the lower and Basement Mexico, the duplication of the nightmare, where the man dominates and determines the endemic, with the exception of respect for the women in the lower and Basement Mexicos, everything is duplicated. The percentage of literacy, the subhuman living condition, lower salaries, and marginalization. These add up to the nightmare that the system prefers to ignore or disguise under the makeup of general indices. Which hides the exploitation of women and makes general exploitation possible. But something is beginning not to fit in this dual submission. The dual nightmare begins to duplicate an awakening. Women from lower and Basement Mexico awaken, fighting against the present and the past, which threatens to be their future. The conscious of the humanity passes through female consciousness. The knowledge of being human implies they know they're women and struggle. They no longer need anyone to speak for them. Their words follow and double route of the self-propelled rebellion, the double motor of rebel women. Love that when they bring in the women. Not many of these people bring in the women and things like a lot of indigenous societies and like the black community. But when it comes to reading other things, like Mao brought up women. Mao brought up that women hold up half the sky, which is good. But I don't know. I'm still reading Lenin, so I'll figure out if Lenin even talks about women. But it's hardly talked about. There's no liberation without women. Yep. Yes, they did. That's why he's sub commandante. Letters to December. Oh, wait. Mr. Zeldilio. Welcome to the Nightmare. December 3rd, 1994. Letter to Zeldilio after his inauguration speech as the new president of Mexico. I must conclude due to the lack of time, but I will add one more observation. Sometimes it is man's lot to attack the rights of others, to take their assets, threaten the lives of those who defend their nationality, make the highest virtues appear to be crimes, and give to his own vices the luster of true virtue. But there is one thing which neither falsity nor purified can reach. And that is the sentence of history. History will judge us. Benito Juarez to Maximilian and Habsburg in response to the confidential letter that Maximilian proposed a secret negotiation and a position in his government. Mr. Ernesto Zeladillo Ponce de Leon. Ooh, was Ponce de Leon bad or was he good? I can't remember. Can't remember Ponce de Leon's good or bad. Welcome to the Nightmare. You should know that the political system you represent, the one to which you owe our access to power, although not to legitimacy, has prostituted language to such a degree that today politics is synonymous to lies, crime, and treachery. I only say to you that millions of Mexicans would like to say, we don't believe you. And I add what perhaps not all believe. Enough of this waiting for the day when things will change. Our words today are the same ones we have heard at the beginning of other administrations. The nation distrusts the electoral process that fraudulently raised you towards the illusory transfer of power. So I direct myself to you, but more to you, your tutor, Mr. Salinas de Gortira, I think, who, as seen by the cabinet that accompanies you in this new lie, refused to retire from national political life. How do you expect the nation to believe you will seek justice in the assassination that sustains Mexico's recent history and revealed the true criminal face of your state party? How can we believe you when one of those accused of the cover-up has been rewarded with the right to manage our soil's wealth? I see that you hold to Sendosol, the government agency that dispenses alms, and that dignity you can possibly bring us in exchange for the frank dialogue and respectful negotiations when you appoint as your conscious buying money man and hand me down from Selena's team. Since May 1993, instead of extending economic assistance to the place most in need, he has been busy buying indigenous dignity as if it were a trinket in the crafts market. It is our counterinsurgency plan, the proliferation of social work in order to weaken our base of popular support. It is a good strategy found in all the North American anti-guerrilla manuals and in all its history of failures. But don't you realize that money is never spent on social work? it winds up in the pocket of the corrupt leaders and municipal presidents of the PIR in Chiapas countryside. It is this counsel from Argentina's military advisor? Will you be deceived again like the time you were told that millions on millions of old and new pesos were invested in the region that after January 1st suddenly became a conflict zone, quote unquote? How much more money and how much more blood are necessary for you to learn that corruption, which up to now has allowed you to survive as a political system, will be your grave tomorrow? Allow me to continue to comment. Your cabinet is proof that your inauguration speech is only a bunch of words rather than a governmental team. It is more like a storefront. In your economic team, you have placed a team inherited from your tutor that distinguishes itself by its willingness to sell out in everything that concerns our national sovereignty and Mexican dignity. In the ministries of foreign affairs, you have someone who looks good to the outsiders, but not to the Mexican people. You have foreign affairs supply become commercial relations. In the Department of the hydraulic resources, you have guaranteed that poverty and discontent will continue to grow in the Mexican countryside. In general, you can see in your cabinet a foreign and Frenchified shadow. It casts suffered by all Mexicans during the past administration. So many lies, so much cover up will be useless. This country will explode in your hands, no matter how much you believe that you control the resources necessary to keep the people as, quote, put up with anything Mexicans. I listened carefully to your speech on the radio. You are correct when you say it is not our violence that the nation fears, but our lessons is incomplete. You characterize the climate of insecurity in which the country lives as amorphous. The principal promoters and instability, insecurity, and violence is the state party system. It is the political system that you cannot destroy, quite simply because the power you now hold, you owe to its existence. Hold on a second. The cabinet you present to the country today is a small demonstration of the pending debts with which your administration commences. Your speech will crumble when your various accomplices, those who cover up of the state crime, helped you to the presidency, come to claim their due. The crime began with the assassination of the one from whom you inherited your candidacy. It continued in the mockery of the electoral campaigns. It passes a self-test on the 21st of August, and it culminates in this fateful December 1st, 1994. Two, quote, first, end quote, days now mark Mexico's history in the opposite ways. The 1st of January was marked by the rising cries for dignity and rebellion of the Mexicans of different social origins, but suffering the same disgrace. Since that day, men, women, and children, and the elderly in cities and the countryside of different colors, of different races and languages, but of a common suffering, speak with a single indigenous voice. The other hand, the 1st of December concludes. The burial commenced long before the 21st of August, the burial of a hope for a peaceful transition to democracy, liberty, and justice. The indigenous communities suffer not only the serious privations, injustice, and lack of opportunity that you point out. They also suffer from serious illness that little by little begins to affect the rest of the population. Rebellion. While our government lasts, you will be witness to this. You say, quote, the government, society, the affected communities. We will all unite against poverty, end quote. Nevertheless, you appointed a cabinet along the same lines of Carlos Salinas de Gortari, the man who buried the country in misery. We do not want for Mexico your kind of unity, which will assure the permanence of the same system of oppression, now made up to look like a new administration. That is not the type of unity that Mexico needs. The one that our history reclaims is the unity against the state party system of government, which has the nation submerged in a poverty of body and spirit. You point out that, quote, during this year, the spirit of all Mexicans have been darkened by the event of Chiapas, by violence, and more so by the conditions of profound injustice, misery, and negligence, which fertilized that violence, end quote. Neither the conditions of profound injustice nor the violence belong exclusively to the state of Chiapas. The entire nation suffers the high social cost imposed by neoliberalism. If there are no profound transformations, violence will darken the nation, and not necessarily because we promote it. You contradict yourself when you say, quote, there will be no violence on the government's part, end quote, because the white guards of the large cattle ranchers and the businessmen act in impunity and with government complicity. You are starting off wrong if you can offer half truths. You say you are, quote, indignant to learn that women suffer violence in public, that children and adolescents are victims of abuse outside of their schools, that workers lose their salaries in muggings, and small businessmen in armed robberies outraged to learn of the impunity resulting from the abuse of authority, venality, and corruption, end quote. Yes, and it is also outrageous to learn that there are 24 billionaires at the expense of a humiliating 4% increase in the already paltry minimum wage. It is also outrageous to learn that the left of our national identity has been legalized by the North American Free Trade Agreement, which only means freedom for the powerful to rob and the freedom for the dispossessed to live in misery. It is an outrageous that the one who now wears the presidential sash does so not by the will of the people, but by the will of money and fear. You say, quote, the brutal assassinations of some of the country's prominent political figures have deeply wounded the citizenry. They have shown discontent and doubt about certain institutions, and we should admit it. Have divided the Mexicans. End quote. Yes, they are divided, but not only by those crimes, but by those perpetrated day and night by all the members of the governmental apparatus, from the previous leaders of the executive branch to the very last minor municipal bureaucrat. You ask for unity and point out that, quote, the moment has arrived when we must gather our wills without sacrificing our indifferences, end quote. But you are only looking for the endorsement of legitimacy, not given you by the popular vote. Your offer of the, quote, permanent dialogue, end quote, has already taken shape in the repression which has set into motion in December. Perhaps you are thinking of a, quote, dialogue commission made up of let me see this word. Sometimes words are hard for me. Well, yeah, everybody knows words are hard for me.
Motion in December. Perhaps you are thinking of a dialogue commission made up of grenadiers and policemen,
hold on a second, for some reason, and policemen to deal with the press and the opposition. It is not necessary to declare that as president of the republic, you will not intervene, quote, in any way to the processes and decisions which are solely the parties to make, end quote. The party to which you belong, that will be done by Mr. Carlos Salinas del Gortira, your cabinet, and the impunity enjoyed by the PRI leaders is proof enough. Of course, we agree with you when you say that, quote, in this historic moment, let no one run from responsibility, lessen the effort, fall into the temptation of giving up, end quote. We, the Zapatistas, will not run from our responsibility, lessen our efforts, or give into temptations, or giving up. We will continue to struggle with our weapons in our hands against the state party system, which allows us to see clearly the figure of Salinas standing behind you. I'm gonna look. Wait, but why do we mute them? From November 17th, 1994 to the present, I carry the baton, of the Supreme Command and the rebel forces. Consequently, I assume the responsibility of the responding to you in the name of the entire army. In our first speech as president, you point out our desire to seek negotiation as a way of resolving the conflict, and you offer us that road. Mr. Zedilio, I hope I said that right, it is my duty to say to you that we cannot believe you. You are part of a system that has arrived at the greatest aberration to resort to assassinations in order to settle its differences, as if you were a group of criminals. You do not speak to us as a representative of the nation. Your words is stained with blood from the assassination of thousands, including some from our own political circles. That stain covers the Institutional Revolutionary Party, PRI. Hey, Miriam. Salam alaikum. How can we believe in the sincerity of your invitation to a negotiated solution? See if I have any gifts. I think I have like 3. And I'll look for more here real quick. Have any more? No. God damn it. Wish I had enough. From the beginning of the presidential term, the number of troops have increased, making evident the dispossession to annihilation. Since November 14th, the intrusion of planes overhead was obvious and continuous. Quote, Hercules plane transported men and military supplies to the counterinsurgency commando base on the Guatemalan border. The foreign military advisor, quote unquote, and I want to say clearly that they are not Argentinian, because these animals have no country, have prepared their pupils. The fights have stopped. I suppose you are ready. We know the number and the location of your troops, your general strategy, and a few tactical plans. Jesus Christ. Unfortunately, we can take no widespread political and armed action. The military encirclement prevents us. Our repeated declaration against the increase of your belligerent preparations have only frustrated the board the nation. You should know that I have given orders that all members of the CCRI remain in the rear guard to guarantee that the political direction of our just cause not to be lost. Know that, as in January, I have asked that our military leaders stay with their units. I will do the same. I have made the necessary preparations so that my successors, to the military leadership, can assume their responsibilities without major problems in case I should die. Our main strength is also our main weakness. The support of the civilian population, which allows us to grow and become strong, now obliges us to abandon all intent to retreat without them. That is why, for us, there is no stepping back. We must fight at the side of the people who have protected us. We will be the shields and the guardians of their lives. I know that takes from us all possibilities of survival. To confront any army superior to ours in weapons or personnel, although not in morality, nullifies the possibilities of success. To surrender, as has been expressively forbidden. Any Zapatistas leader who opt to surrender will be decommissioned. Ah, interesting. No matter the outcome of this war, sooner or later, this sacrifice, which today appears useless and sterile to many, will be compensated by the lightning that will illuminate other lands. For sure, the light will reach deep into the south, shimmer in the Mar de Plata and the Andes, and the land of Artigas, Paraguay, and the entirety of this inverted and absurd pyramid that is Latin America. Strength is not on our side. It has never been on our side of the dispossessed. But history's reasoning and the shame and adore we feel in our chests, that is called dignity, makes us today nameless, true men and women forever, with the unintelligent image of our patience waiting, compensated with the aggression clothed in olive green jackets. We receive your office to make us, quote, part of the solution, end quote, and a secret and a direct dialogue in reference to your offer that we be, quote, an active part in the carrying out of actions, end quote. Let me make this clear. If you are referring to the cost of Zapatista's dignity, know that there's not enough money in the entire nation to come close to its price. Don't deceive yourself into thinking that our cry, quote, our cry, everything for everyone, nothing for ourselves. This is passing fancy or a deceit to cover up our ambitions of power. The Zapatistas don't have a price, because dignity does not have a price. In reference to the direct and secret dialogue in my role as Supreme Commander of the EZLN, I solemnly reject your invitation to a secret negotiation behind the back of the nation. Thank God. Awesome. They say that come years of war, thousands of deaths and great destruction, you and I will wind up negotiating. That it is best to do it now. That war should be avoided. But which war is to be avoided? The one that we began against your system by making legitimate use of self-defense and rebellion? Or the one that you have made against us since you have been the power and government in these Mexican lands? The war that we want to end is the one waged by the political system behind and above you and against us. The war against the democratizing efforts, against any desire for justice, against the aspiration for liberty. This is the war that all Mexicans suffer and that must come to an end. Once it ends, the other war, our war, everyone's war, will extinguish itself, unless useless and sterile. It will leave like a nightmare, soothed by the first light of day. This is the peace we want. Any effort in any other direction is a deception. To prevent the war of the dispossessed by keeping or stepping up the war, which benefits those in power, will only postpone history's judgment that democracy, liberty, and justice will triumph on the soil and in the skies of Mexico. If you are a man of honor and dignity, I invite you to resign. You should resign from the shame of heading up the great lie that has betrayed the Mexican people and their hope for the peaceful transition to democracy. But before you do so, bring Carlos Salinas de Gortera, to the political trial and help the world avoid another lie, like the one the World Trade Organization prepares, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And before that, the Supreme Chief of the Federal Army. Let officials, ranks, and troops go so they can choose the path dictated by their consciousness and their patriotic hearts. Don't humiliate them by obliging them to accept foreign intervention, which advises them to kill Mexicans. I have owed that responsibility and have released many troops from the commitment to stay so that they could have a choice to be able to give up, to choose conformity, not as one has accepted, neither a salary nor threats behind them to our ranks, but shame and dignity from chains that are difficult to break. All of them have chosen the same path as yesterday, patriotism and justice. For my part, I recognize that I have been mistaken about you. On February, I believe that your patriotic interest would be greater than your arrogance, that your intelligence would let you see that you yourself constitute the major obstacle to the country's development, that you would step aside and open the door for a peaceful transition to democracy. But it did not happen in that way. On August 21st, you decided to slam the door shut and to repeat the arrogance of landslide victory. But history shows that the doors to peaceful change and into a violent change, a peace and to war, are inversely linked. When one is closed, the other opens. But closing the door to the peaceful transition to democracy, you open the heavy portal to war. The unintelligence of your behavior in Chiapas suddenly has brought me back to reality. The state party system is not intelligent. Furthermore, today I see the imbecility is inherent to your decay. Having had the opportunity to ease the knot of the political conflict, you held to it. You held on to it and tightened it, roping in sectors once on the margins of the conflict to the extremes of polarization. The deterioration, can't say that word, is irreversible. The middle ground has disappeared, and the extremes comfort each other and demand the extermination of each other. We have grown by tens of thousands. As I pointed out to you, the supreme government has always taken permanent measures to get rid of us as a problem, and that has made us grow. Facing the risk of eliminating us by political isolation, by creating a vacuum, the government and its clumsy local and regional politics has breathed life into the fire which it will ultimately consume it. You must disappear, not just because you represent a historic aberration, a negotiation of humanity and a cynical cruelty. You should disappear because you are an insult to intelligence. You made us possible. You made us possible. You made us grow. We are your other, your Siamese opposite. In order for us to disappear, you must disappear as well. It is very difficult to try to listen to you. One supposes that one is speaking with rational beings, but apparently not. Accustomed to buying, corrupting, imposing, breaking, and assassinating all that is placed in front of you, face to face with dignity, you assume and pose of the crafty businessman seeking the best price for his goods. This has been your systematic attitude during the 11 months of an unstable ceasefire. It is the intelligent attitude of a gambler who dispossess a coin into a slot machine and waits for the product which he has chosen and bought peace to drop out. You should know that we have done everything possible to keep the conflict within the political realm, to avoid at all costs the reinitiation of hostilities. We have called upon different national political personalities, invited them to initiatives. That can direct through political and civil means the discontent that now overflows towards violence. If these politicians refuse to risk their political capital in what are just demands, the annulment of the election, the transitional government, and the new electoral process, when there will be no solution, the inevitability honored will come. Today, Mexico may not have statesmen who are willing to pay the price of their political image in exchange for being responsible to the struggle for democracy. Nevertheless, this does not mean that they will not exist tomorrow. Men and women for whom politics is not synonymous with cynicism and a surrender disguised as gradualism. Mr. Ernesto Zedillo. Let's see here. We're doing good. We got 20 minutes. Until today, you are nothing more than a citizen to us. Today, you are the official I don't know this word. Let's see here. Hold on. And will it let me do it? I think it's inheritor. Let me make sure. Read out loud.
Until today, you were nothing more than a citizen to us. Today, you are the official inheritor.
Yeah, I was right. Inheritor of the system without vision, which sacrifices the future of the national sovereignty of the nation. After today, in an unlike case that you should try to make contact with us. I declare we will make public all communication from our government while it lasts. I am sure that in your rise to power, you have found men and women ready to sell themselves and compromise, quote, under reasonable circumstances, which is nothing more than a rationalized surrender. The men and women who have confronted the state party system since January 1st, 1993, are perhaps of the stripe you have not encountered before. We are men and women for whom country, democracy, liberty, and justice should be beside grand and noble words. A reality for the Mexican nation. For us, it is shameful to live without reaching that goal. To die fighting for it is an honor. Now that from today, along with the 7 elements of the baton of the Zapatistas command, I carry out original volumes of a diary of the Constitutional Congress debates from November of 1916 to February of 1917. As long as a new constitution is not created, we will uphold the 1917 Constitution as the true one. We will fight for it. In historical terms, you and I are a little value. Random luck has brought us face to face. You personify all that is reactionary, anti-democratic, and contrary to the sentiments of the interests of the dispossessed. We personify hope to have at least the opportunity to decide our own destinies, that democracy, liberty, and justice be more than just the subject of speeches and textbooks and become a reality for everyone, but above all for those who have nothing. We have a face, a name, a past, a present, and a future. With our name comes the curse to carry weapons in our hands and the honor to rescue the history of dignity. Our surname carries our vocation to the nation and to liberty. We are candidates. Only for a mass grave and intimidated oblivion. But, quote, we are the thousands of Mexicans scattered throughout our national territory. We are men and women, children and old people who are recuperated together with word dignity, the conviction that human beings should struggle to be free if they are slaves, and once free should struggle so that other human beings can also be free. We know that our refusal to a dialogue under the conditions that you propose will make a military solution your first choice in the future decisions. We do not fear death nor history judgment. And if in truth the entire country is willing to give up its desire for liberty and democracy, then the clamor for our annihilation will be gigantic, and you will not have to worry. Important government officials say they will annihilate us all in a few hours or a few days if the weather is bad. That way, the stock market, foreign trade, and the balance of payment will suffer only a few days of uncertainty. On the other hand, if the people of Mexico wish to listen to our rebel cry for dignity, and we believe they do, then millions of voices will join us in our demand for the three conditions of dignified peace, democracy, liberty, and justice. You are no longer you. You are a personification of an unjust system, an anti-democratic and criminal. We, the, quote, illegal, end quote, the, quote, transgressors of the law, end quote, the, quote, professionals of violence, end quote, the, quote, nameless, are everybody's hope today and always. This is all, Mr. Zendilio. I have spoken to you with sincerity in a way in which you have not spoken to me, but I may be mistaken. I reiterate our demands for peace, democracy, liberty, and justice for all Mexicans. As long as these demands remain unmet, they will be war in Mexico's territories, veil health to you, and a parachute for that cliff that comes with your tomorrow. From the mountains of the Mexican Southwest, Subcomandante Insurgent Marcos. And you know what? This, let's see here. 13. This might be a good stopping point. That was a huge letter, and it was really good letter. Really good demands, very, very to the point. Yeah, wait, hold on a second. And we might stop here. Does anybody mind if we stop right here? Because it seems like a good stopping point, even though the next thing is not that long. It's just like it was a lot and it needs to be digested. What's up?
That was
Yeah. Okay. All right. What do you have to say?
This was a very interesting read. I learned a lot of things about how long the Zapatistas have been around, and the government and the president and what they were doing, and it was very interesting.
Yep. It's a demand. I like how he described the levels of Mexico, and how he had an analysis of each of these stratums. The ones that own basically Mexico, the ones that do the politicians and the managements of Mexico, the middle of Mexico, and the basement. I love the explanations there, and that really drowned like the material conditions. You know, I really like that part. It really honed for me, and also I'm better understanding of what they mean and stuff, and what they're fighting for, and what the levels are. And I love how they said that the bottom basement is basically the catalyst for the liberation process. And I loved how he brought women as the leaders of the Zapatistas. I love that, because there's not enough revolutions, I think, that actually bring forth women in their struggles. I don't see a lot of that usually, and that's nice to see that here. Thank you, user. Anybody else have anything else to say?
If I remember correctly, I thought user was your friend.
Yes, they are.
Yes. Okay, I couldn't remember their name.
Yeah. So, what happened? What did something happen earlier while I was reading? Was there a misunderstanding or something?
They don't like the rules. The not using caps when talking, because that's for mods only. They didn't like that. They decided to tell Elle when they were a loser.
Huh. Okay. Well, all right then. Let's see. User says, I like the part about individual alienated through the system, agents of system. Huh. Sweet. All right then. Well, if no one else has anything to say, I'm closing it down early because it seemed like a very good. The next section will be "Come Brothers, Come Sisters." So that'll be something. So, communism took my food. Sure. All right. Does anybody have anything to say?
No.
All right. I will talk to you all tomorrow, and have a good one. Have a good